get to your carburetor, you need to remove the cover of the airbox. There are 2 screws that need to come out in order to access it. There's one here that's very hard to get at because it's covered by the chassis. The rear run's no problem. Just a Phillips screwdriver. On a vintage Vespa from the P200 back, this is going to be a slotted screw. In the case of the Stella, it's going to be a Phillips screw. Now this front screw, since it's hard to get at, there's a couple of different ways to go about it. Probably for most people, if you can find the longest Phillips screwdriver that you have, you can get into it from an angle and turn very carefully, being cautious not to strip the screw, and turn it out. Or if you have a more comprehensive toolbox, a little angle screwdriver like this will fit in there and be able to turn the screw to remove it. Once you've got the 2 screws removed, removing the airbox cover, it's a tight fit, but it'll wiggle out of there. You have to get it past the idle adjustment screw. This screw is what sets your idle speed. Turning it clockwise will make your idle go faster, and turning it counterclockwise will slow it down. So lift up on your airbox cover to get it out of the way, and then pivot it clockwise as you come out of there, and it will clear the chassis. Once your airbox cover comes out, use this as a handy tray to put the screws that you remove and the items you remove from your carburetor, keep them in a safe place so they don't get lost. The next item for removal and maintenance is your air filter. There are 2 screws that hold this on. Again, don't touch your idle adjustment speed screw, but in the rear and in the front of the idle adjustment speed screw are 2 slotted screws that need to be removed. The rear one and the front. Now, your air filter, again, it's a snug fit, but it will come up and out of the way. Put all your extra parts right there in the lid of the airbox cover. We don't often replace the air cleaner. We will usually just spray it with a carburetor cleaner, let it dry out, blow it out with compressed air, and then reinstall. A common problem in a scooter that isn't running properly is jets that are fouled. On the carburetor, there are 2 jets, the main jet and the idle jet. Both of these periodically will need removal and cleaning before they are replaced. Before you pull the jets out, I like to take a rag and put it into the air intake. That way, if you fumble the jet with your fingers, it's not going to drop into a place where you don't want it to go. So I've put a rag in there. Now I am removing the idle jet. Just loosening it. Try not to force it. It's a brass jet and can strip easily if you don't do it properly. You'll notice on the idle jet a number of different openings in it. I like to use an E string, or the high string on from a guitar. Run it through the openings. It will clear out any buildup that may have occurred inside there. That will loosen things up. The reason you want to go with the smallest possible string is that you don't want something that's going to increase the size of your jet at all, something that's going to ream it out. Once you've done that, give it a shot with some carburetor cleaner and some compressed air, and it's ready to reinstall. Now we're going to remove the main jet. Same procedure. Loosen it up. thread it out. The main jet, which is far less likely to become fouled, still comes apart in 3 separate pieces. Now, we have seen one of these parts vibrate loose from the other. The bike is not going to want to run. It's one of the places we will look if we have a bike that just isn't running properly. We'll check the main jet. Sometimes this piece will have come loose. But when it all fits together, it should fit together very snugly. Once you've cleaned it using the same process as the idle jet and reinstall it, it goes back together as one piece. Give it a good squeeze, making sure everything is tight. Pull away, making sure nothing wants to slip back out, and then it's ready to reinstall. When reinstalling the jets, just turn it back in clockwise. When you feel it get snug, just give it a little bit of a tightening, not too tight. You don't want to over tighten or strip the brass slot. The linkage for the throttle cable runs through this cable and into the throttle slide of the carburetor. When you turn the throttle, you see how it operates. It pivots, and as it pivots, it also operates the oil pump for the injector system. When you pull out the choke, this is what's happening inside your airbox. It's pulling out the choke, pushing it back in. You want to make sure that this link stays on there securely and doesn't slip off, otherwise your choke will not operate. The oil comes into your carburetor through this line. It's very important that this does not slip off. Make sure that the clamp that holds the oil line is very secure, and your fuel comes into the carburetor through the fuel line here. Again, another clamp that you want to make sure remains tight, and you check it periodically to make sure that it hasn't loosened up. When you replace the airbox cover, one thing to pay particular attention to is the gasket that goes around the top edge of the airbox. It can slip out of place, and you want to make sure that is securely around the rim of the airbox before you reinstall the cover. Just like when it came out, replacing the airbox cover is a tight fit. Slide the back end down in there, and then just pivot it back counterclockwise till everything seats down into place. Replacing the 2 screws is a little tricky because you have to find the threaded portion in the lower portion of the airbox for them to start. You'll feel it when it gets started though. The front one, of course, being a tighter fit, is also a little more difficult. But once you've got it into place, turn it clockwise to get it started, and then finish the job with your Phillips screwdriver.